Thank you so much, Jens. And hi, Aurore. Thank you so much for joining us today for this important topic. Crisis, impact, inclusion, and AI, the evolving face of entrepreneurship. In fact, it's several topics in one, but with your diverse background, we thought we'll gain unique insight in all of these for our attendees today. These are exciting times for entrepreneurs. There are both challenges and opportunities, as we know. Before we move on into the main discussion, I suggest we do a short intro. So I'll start with my short intro and then we'll move to you, Aurore. So everyone, I am Naimul. I'm working as a business advisor at Coompanion Stockholm. Coompanion Stockholm is a startup advisory organization funded by Swedish state. We offer free business advice to founders who want to start a company or association. As a business coach, I coach over 500 entrepreneurs every year, tech startups, impact startups in Stockholm. I'm also an early stage entrepreneur and investor, and I also make music. So some of you can follow me on Spotify. So that's a little bit about me. So let's move to you, Aurore. Our audience are curious to know who you are. So take it on.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me, guys. This is super exciting. I've been in a fireside chat with you, but that was a while ago. So maybe I'm part of that number 50. I am what we call in Swedish a smorgasbord. So I do quite a lot of different things. My background's in waste management and recycling originally, and now I've built companies in the tech mobile space, and then moved into VC and became an investor for a while. We were Europe's largest early stage fund, EQT Ventures. And then my life has progressed, and I mean, I don't want to misuse the word, but I'm becoming more and more of an activist. And as every day goes by, I feel more and more concerned, but also passionate about the impact issues that we're facing, both in terms of social inequalities and climate change. So today, I'm a partner at a business called SusTechable, where we work to promote, highlight, and discuss technology that can move the needle in terms of sustainability. And finding opportunities to build bridges between state, government, business and private sphere, and technology and academia. So very exciting. And the topic is broad, as you said, but there is interlinks between them. And that's why it's important to talk about all these things together and not see them as siloed. Brilliant. That was the short version.
Very exciting. How do you see, so we are all in midst of a crisis for past few months. Some of us have chosen to work from home, some of us still commute, and this has different implications for different industry. How do you see, as somebody who has been involved in the impact sector, been an entrepreneur, are an entrepreneur, have been an investor, what does it mean for entrepreneurs out there, this crisis? Yeah.
Well, it's a complex question, and it has different answers for different people. And I think for us in the West, it's one set of issues, or in some sort of the established world. But I think looking at some of the trends, I can see that the tech community, or people within the entrepreneurial space that are thinking about building companies, as well as friends, both in the Middle East, where I've worked a lot, but also here in Europe, there's some sort of heightened sense of responsibility. I think a lot of people have woken up to, we're not stronger than our weakest link. We're interconnected. We sit in a community. So the past 30 years, and I'm exaggerating a little to make the point, we've seen that the fabric of society is breaking slowly, and the contract that we've had has broken in terms of how do we build our lives, how do we stick together, how do we build, how do we take care of the planet. And now with COVID-19, the personal tragedies, as well as the professional tragedies, as well as societal tragedies, has created a sense of, what can I do? What's my role? What can my skill set, what can my family, what can my business, how do I fit into the system and how can I contribute? And there's excitement in that, which I find so inspiring to see, that people are in a creative, positive way, thinking about how to contribute and where they fit in. And I think fitting in is such a philosophical, interesting concept, because once we start thinking about ourselves as a part of the whole, with a role to play and an interdependence on others, we lose slightly our sense of entitlement. It's no longer about me, and I want the most, and I want to win the competition of the most money or the most users or everything else. I belong, and it's both. I personally believe, I think we feel better and we're happier when we realize that we belong and we sit in together, and we drop the competition of the more and the most. But it also becomes much more, obviously, a collaborative and constructive, because we are in a crisis above and beyond COVID, which is the planetary crisis.
Very interesting. So could it be that entrepreneurship or entrepreneurs could be the missing glue in this case? So they can bind the different facets of a society, different actors of the society with solutions. And I liked your initial take on activism. Could we see entrepreneurship and activism going hand in hand forward? What do you think?
Yeah, but you know what? To be fair, I think the entrepreneurship community has had that to a degree always. The mindset has been to break boundaries, to shift, to change, to build. And I think you're absolutely right. And now there's a layer of activism on top of that, which is how does my change and my contribution add into the whole, and a sense of serving. But I think actually one of the big pieces in the puzzle that's been missing, and hopefully COVID-19 is now changing that, is the financial bit, and the structural establishment also now needs to get in line, because the status quo, the way we've built, the way we've measured success, the way societies have been structured, the way we've accepted social inequalities, the way we've seen how societies have moved, that can no longer work. It's unsustainable, which means that the entrepreneurship community holds the power and the energy, and they always have to a degree, now with an activist layer on top of it. But they need to now be backed properly by VCs, pension funds, states, the establishment, in terms of we have to change and everyone needs to be behind it. This is no longer a sense of, I hope some inventor or entrepreneur or innovative person is going to save our asses in this crisis. Everyone needs to get involved.
And then do you think that is happening at enough pace? Like in the past few years, we have seen rise of impact entrepreneurship. We have seen a directional shift in funding to some extent, not enough, I believe. Do you think that is going to grow over time, like entrepreneurs becoming impact focused going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, the obvious shout out is to my fellow Swedish compatriot Greta, who's pushed the needle in terms of the sense of urgency. Because what's fascinating, and I'm reading a lot now about climate psychology, which is, we've known there's no actual surprises here. Science has been unanimous in the crisis and just basically counted down, and now we're at the edge. And the interesting bit is how the brain works and how we take in crisis and acute, and how we deal with fear, and how we become constructive and move into action when certain things happen. And COVID-19 showed us impact immediate, crisis immediate, And then different strands of activities happen. And then we can discuss who did well and who hasn't, and there will be a big postmortem on this. But at least it created a sense of global movement immediately, whilst this slow crisis of the planetary collapse hasn't really. And so to answer your question, no, I don't think we're doing enough. I think a few strong individuals has pushed the agenda. A few incidents, including COVID-19, but also fires and temperatures and floodings, has created a mental sense of this is real, and then a movement. What's interesting and where I try to spend my time is, how do you create the lubricant to get policy moving? Because as I said, I don't think the entrepreneurship space is the actual issue. I think we need to create a context where that can flourish. And sometimes it's about policy. It's about how we use our tax system. It's about setting roofs and ceilings on carbon emissions, and therefore allowing capital to flow in a certain direction, because we know that an industry is changing, or capital is running out, or the risk because of weather. And that's when the actual structures of society start moving. And that's happened to a degree. We see, I'm very excited to see the European Green Deal, which is setting a framework for how Europe now needs to transition into a greener, sustainable society. And it's putting in place all those things that we need. It's not perfect, and nothing is, but it's the policy side that I think needs to move the most.
I think very interesting point. And then key thing with policy is that it's always in a pocket of a government or in a pocket of a region, and then it could be a policy which is at a global level. How do you see with the currents over the recent few years, we have seen evolving criticism to the paradigm of globalization. So countries now are moving into, so they are trying to push their own agendas, their own people, their own borders. That's something which has been developing. While at the same time, a crisis knows no border. A crisis just hits the environmental crisis. It's all over the world. So how do we, do you think we are too divided to create policy level shifts which are required at a global level today? Do you think there would be improvement going forward in that?
I mean, on face level, the first layer of the onion, the answer is yes. We see that there is tension and conflict, and we see polar views. But in reality, I don't think that's true. I think there is more common denominators than not, and there just needs to be, and it's age old, the concept of listening. And we're now in a bit of a chapter of fear, where it's been health fears, practical fears, financial fears, which is not allowing us to be the best that we can. And so where I see most hope is certain politicians, but also a movement of youth that is constructive and excited. And as I was saying, I think the positive side of COVID, it's the insight of I can contribute, and the whole emotional positivity that comes around that. And what we probably need to add to the international community and to the general conversation is a level of listening. I think Obama said it well a couple of months, that no one's perfect. And if we sit in our chambers behind the camera and zoom it out to the internet and shame and criticize, we don't actually win anything more than I feel better. I mean, it's the easiest way to pretend to be smart is to criticize. So by removing that layer and creating an adventure where everyone's allowed to join and where people's opinions matter, and it's easier said than done, and you can easily criticize me for being naive, but I just think the opposite isn't an option really. So I'd rather go for the naive, bombastic, exciting version of what could happen and work for that.
Brilliant. I would advise all our attendees, if they have any questions, any points that they would like to discuss with us after the fireside, they can put it in the Q&A or chat, and Jens will bring that in. Coming back to entrepreneurship community, because that's where Startup Grind connects entrepreneurs all over the world. So if there are entrepreneurs who want to create impact ventures in today's times, and we see also that there is always an issue with early stage funding, what do you think? How should they reach out to the world? How should you have an extensive experience in the venture capital side? What would be your advice to impact entrepreneurs on how should they position yourself in these times?
I think that's an excellent question, and it will ultimately encapsulate the general position the world is in, which is the challenges that we're facing and that the entrepreneur is facing from an impact point of view is complex. It's not complicated, it's complex, which means we don't know how long it's going to take to solve. We don't know exactly the cost of it. We don't know the exact consequences of it. The example I was given the other day, which I thought was brilliant, is it's like parenting. I have now 18 years ahead of me of parenting, and there is no manual. I have to every day see how my daughter reacts to certain things. And there's so many things that will influence her well-being, both in terms of nutrition, friends, school, etc., etc. And I have to work with it every day for 18 years. And in the same way, the planetary crisis or demographics or migration or social inequality, they all stick together in a complex system that we can't pre-think. I can't make a plan. I can't go to investors and say, this is what we're going to do, this is what it's going to cost, and this is how long it's going to take. It won't work, which means that the traditional relationship between the investor and the entrepreneur needs to change. And we can help educate the investors in the opportunity of the complex challenge, but the investors need to free themselves from the plan, the traditional way of an Excel sheet, knowing the exact steps. And the media needs to free itself. Big corporates need to free themselves. Politicians need to free ourselves from that. Because once we embrace the complexity and we go, this is the direction, this is why it's important, this is why in every other option, standing still or moving backward is extinction. We just have to move with faith, hold each other's hand, and work damn hard in that direction, and constantly iterate, move with the changes and learn with the changes. So as an impact investor, you need to help as an impact entrepreneur, you need to help your investors understand that journey. And don't pretend that you know, because the investor community is more savvy than that. They will know that you don't know, and if you're bullshitting me, we're not going to work together. But also set the expectations in terms of how hard it is, and the goal being either so exciting that you can't miss it, the whole FOMO, which is a great way to get investors on board, or the opposite, if we don't do it. So it's always a question of creating an adventure. And as you know, I mean, you know this space more than anyone else. In the investors' decision-making process in the early stages is emotional. They pretend to be rational. It's backed up by the Excel sheet, but it comes from, I want.
So it means.
What's your experience on that?
Yeah, I also think when, so my experience is that when I coach startup teams, so I exactly see the divide that you were pointing out. There are certain startup teams which are very rational. They're trying to build a very strong rational story projection. These are going to be our sales numbers and everything. Monthly recurring revenue is going to be like that. We'll be controlling the churn rate. And then on the other side, there are teams who want to change the world, and they are so emotionally involved in the problems that they're trying to solve. I believe that in early stage funding, when investors are looking for funding an idea, they want to see somebody who believes in it, their own idea. So an entrepreneurship team which is believing in their ideas, are passionate about them, are going to go all in to solve a problem, I think that's something which clicks very well with investors at an early stage. Of course, as you grow over time, when you come to second or third round Series A funding, it's a completely different game, because by that time, business has evolved to a level where you can start showing indicators and your grip on the market. So I believe it's both thing. At an early stage, emotions play a very strong role, and your own commitment to the problem or the solution that you're trying to develop, that's a key. Interestingly, I was reading this. Yeah, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think what many entrepreneurs forget is that 10 times out of 10, okay, 9 times out of 10, because I'm not sure, someone else is trying to solve the same problem as you. In Hong Kong, in Stockholm, in Munich, in San Francisco, there are teams everywhere solving the same angle, and their business rationale is the same. So their calculation of the size of the market, their calculation of the size of the opportunity is the same, which means that it's actually not about always the problem that you're solving. Are you annoyed enough about this problem? Is it important enough for you that you'll stick through what ultimately will be a messy journey? So I completely agree with you.
Very interesting. I was reading an interesting article the other day, which was raising a point. Is it an end of the road for, because traditional Silicon Valley mentality has been that you kind of prime a startup and make it ready to be a unicorn. Are we in an age where we are no longer looking for unicorns, but we are looking for solutions that are good enough at a society or at a community level? I think that's an interesting debate which I've seen cropping up in the VC industry. And that's also pointing to a new breed of VCs which can come much earlier, because many of the ideas, entrepreneurs or these passionate individuals, they get bored with the slowness of the system around them, and they move into something. What's your view? Are we still in the unicorn times, or is there a change going forward?
For me, there's two strands of answers here that catalyze the same trend that you're highlighting. One is the financial model for the VCs has changed. So the VC fund is looking for the unicorn from a financial point of view to make the math of the investments work, right? So you need the unicorns. But what's happened is over the course of the last 10 years, and this is partly why I've left VC, because it doesn't add up any longer, is a few big tech companies, we all know who, are hoovering the market and purchasing companies much earlier. And the corporate space has moved in. So everyone, I say everyone, has an in-house VC or a lab or a blah, blah X, which is investing in technology and purchasing earlier, which means that as an entrepreneur, you can build a business and sell it at $300, $400, $500 million, which is by all means a success, and your mother or father will go, well done. But from a VC point of view, it's a failure because you've not built the unicorn, you've sold too early. So the financials of it is changing. And the other part of it that's changing is the conversation that we're having today, which is, why are we doing it? What's the importance here? What are the real problems? And I think the whole societally we've come to a crossroad where we're really waking up to the fact that the system that we've built isn't working for everyone. It's working for a very few on the top. And history has shown us always that if you only benefit the little top, it doesn't work. It always crumbles. It always collapses. civilizations over civilization over civilization. The same thing happens, which means that we could choose to follow the normal path, which is the collapse of the civilization, or we can step back and we can do something else. So impact here becomes existential for everyone, both everyone as well as the topic becomes rational. And so impact then means calculating what we do in a different way, and therefore the unicorn doesn't make any sense any longer. Why would a little team of a few people or a few investors need to benefit again on a global phenomena? I mean, and it's not even great for them any longer, because it's compounding the impact on society that's moving us towards something where we don't want to be. I was reading the other day, as I was saying, I've worked quite a lot in the Middle East. So the analogy they have had there is, we're not looking for unicorns, we're looking for camels, which is the resilience that can pass through the desert in the crisis and hold its own. And I thought that was, maybe a cockroach is even better, the cockroach companies that can stand through the crisis. But I think the mindset is shifting.
Brilliant, brilliant, excellent insights. We'll move to a couple of more points now. How have you seen the development of the entrepreneurship ecosystems, investment systems, or support systems for entrepreneurs, especially when it comes to groups which are traditionally not been able to get a lot of support from such communities? So we have seen a lot of debate. Are we doing enough for female founders? Are migrant entrepreneurs getting enough access to resources? How do you see that from your standpoint? Inclusion, diversity, or marginalized entrepreneurs, or what?
It is a big challenge, and it's not going away, even though we've talked about it for a while now. The numbers aren't actually moving. And from a European point of view, I need Atomico, the fund, has shifted the conversation, and I'm very impressed by how they've continuously tried to highlight the challenges and put their full force behind the importance of the change, and why it's both a question of fairness and standing still and stable in your moral compass, but also why it's financially rational to do it. But nevertheless, it's a quite slow shift, and it's not really having the impact that we want. And I think, again, back to the previous conversation we had, I don't think the challenge is the amount or the quality of the entrepreneurs or the teams that are joining them or building a company or the way they're formulating the challenges that we're facing, or their passion about the challenges that they're facing. It's the other side of the equation. I think what we need to see is more capital with that mindset that really understands it. So more female investors, more from minority groups, creating a more a diverse smorgasbord also on the investment side to match the passion of the entrepreneurial space. And that's moving quite slowly as well, because it's not formulated as the problem. We pretend that the capital is objective. It goes for the best company, but it's not. It's an emotional decision, as we just said. Therefore, you need to have emotional beings on both sides that have different perspectives and therefore fund differently.
Brilliant. One last question before we move into Q&A with Jens. You've also held a key position in the AI sector. And AI is a lot of debate going around AI. So there are governments moving in with a very decided view to developing this sector. A lot is happening in the entrepreneurship sector, but then there is almost an alarmist view coming from some key spokesperson in entrepreneurship industry. So as an AI specialist, how do you see this? We'll have your take on that, and then we move to Q&A. Yeah.
Well, it's a big question to do briefly, but I'll give you the top line, and hopefully we'll be able to discuss it in the Q&A. From a technology point of view, I think it's tickled the imagination. It's such an exciting time where we're able to now finally see the fruit and the opportunities and the impact that artificial intelligence can have now that we have the computing power and the tech and the data in place. Which, I mean, where I come from, what I do, I help corporates and I help government institutions think about how to use artificial intelligence to catalyze what they're doing, to do it more efficiently. And from a sustainability technology point of view, it's very exciting because many of the complexities that we were discussing earlier, we can use help. So my cerebral capacity is tiny, your cerebral capacity is tiny, and we together are tiny plus one. We're pointless from a data crunching point of view. But if we can get help, and with my emotional perspective and your emotional perspective, together with a super brain power computer, then we might be able to start looking at the options and start analyzing the complexity. And again, let's not pretend that we're going to get answers, because as I said, it's a direction, but speed up that direction a little and help us take decisions in this. And for me, I hope that the universe has given us both the sign in terms of COVID-19, yalla, we have to start working on this, but also given us artificial intelligence now, unlocking the power of that, giving us potentially the tool to solve the mess that we've created. And yes, of course, in parallel to this, there is the doomsday scenarios. And I wouldn't say that they're not true. I, for one, find it very worrisome where we let the internet go, or social media, or that a few company owns our digital lives in a way, and we didn't think through many of those things. So yes, we need to think through how we build artificial intelligence. We need to think through unleashing our stereotypes or our inbuilt societal issues and just compounding on that. We want to create something different, but hopefully these trends are coinciding. So with a diverse team supporting the build of artificial intelligence, it will enhance rather than anything else. But we need to be careful, that's for sure. But from a state point of view, from a governmental point of view, which is what I see on a daily basis in my work, is the other challenge, which is hiding behind the fact that we need to think through it. So we need to write a report. We need to put together a group. We need to think for a year. We need to think for another year. And in that, not understanding what the global situation looks like. So from a European point of view, we want to do it properly, and we're therefore not rushing. But we have other parts of the world that are building artificial intelligence, and we do see that it will have an impact on the global geopolitical landscape. So therefore, I'd also see, let's be careful, let's think it through, let's infuse it with our values, but let's not hide behind that thinking process. We also need to act, because again, it's complex. We won't be able to make a 10-step report and then follow through. We need to build, think, listen, build again, think, listen, build again, and continue. I wish everything would be easier in one-liners, but it's not. It demands a bit of intellectual rigor and stamina.
Well, thank you so much for the perspective.
Yeah, I love the think, listen, think. Yeah, Aurore, Naimul, big thank you for the fireside chat. We have a number of questions that come in.